If you've been online recently, you may have seen our pension adverts once or twice. But did you know that Abacus offers so much more than pensions? We have over 40 years experience, and with over 10 accountants we can provide accounting, payroll and tax planning services. We also have dedicated teams with professionals in company formation, trust and estate planning, funds and family office services. Visit our website at www.abacus.gi to find out more.
Thank you for joining us. The purpose of my talk this morning is really just to give a context to what we're doing and what Think Business, Think Gibraltar really is all about.
It is part of Gibraltar's growing international appeal that we welcome people travelling from so many places across the globe to share in our events.
Well, I began my remarks today by noting how significant the Gibraltarian insurance market is to the ABI, but more importantly to consumers in the UK. And we remain fully supportive of this market and of the choice that it gives UK customers.
So in the context of private clients, when they're looking at a jurisdiction that is reliable, stable, safe, we think we tick those boxes quite well.
I'm very excited about it, and I think now is the time really for managers to start really looking at other alternatives other than just looking at the traditional, is it Luxembourg, is it Ireland in a post-Brexit world. I think now will be, what about Gibraltar?
Happening within KPMG because they do vary across the industry. I think some of the things that have really driven change are things like the need to do pay gap reporting. That first promoted the discussion around gender. It's now promoting a discussion around other areas of diversity. So really starting to look at because it exposes the inequality of opportunity. It exposes the very point that Bridget made, which is nobody, or very rarely, are people being paid different wages for like jobs. That's not going to happen. What's driving pay inequality is the lack of promotion, the lack of seniority amongst those groups. So I think we really are starting to expose the differences and have honest conversations. So I think that kind of public exposure has been really helpful. And I think what workplaces are trying to do now is say, okay, if there is an inequality of opportunity, what can we put in place that might help to address that? So I think if policies are being driven by that desire, so if we look at Scandinavian countries, I think James Elliott talked about this yesterday. He joined Entain from NetEnt, and he said, when I look at what it was like working for a Swedish company, where there have been very clear legal requirements around creating equality of opportunity, he's really seen that change come through. And I think that's been one of the things that I've debated many times about. Are quotas a good idea? Are targets more helpful than quotas? For me, I have a reluctance around quotas and it's a self-serving reluctance, because I don't want anyone to be able to say you got that job because they had to fill a gap with you. But I kind of recognise that, and the thing my husband says when I discuss this with him, he says, no, you should want quotas, because you need to. It doesn't matter if you can be accused of that. You just got to suck it up, because you're changing the future for the next generation. And I kind of get that. But I do have a reluctance around it. So I think what's driving more change is the debate that's happening, and a real examination about how can we make the workplace more equal and give that equality of opportunity.
Thank you. So, Micky, I know it's a little bit out of your depth, but I do have to bring it up. Yesterday, I heard a few stories of a panel about the acquisition of some of the gaming startups by the bigger giants. Do you think that startups in the gaming industry are doing things differently for diversity, equity, and inclusion?
So the reason that Denise shared with me the question she was going to ask beforehand, and I said, honestly, I don't think I'm really qualified to answer that question, because I don't know enough about how startups in the industry are operating differently to the big corporates. I think what I will say is that, generally speaking, startups are very driven by what the founder is motivated by, and that's why I think events like yours are really important. The fact that this is an organisation which is intended to encourage business performance in startups, and you're choosing to focus on diversity. So I think that will make the difference, because otherwise you are entirely dependent on whether the founder, the driving forces behind those businesses, wish to be diverse, or even recognise that there might be an issue around diversity and inclusion. I think it's very different when it comes to big corporates, because they do recognise it.
I mean, founders have a lot of control of how they build their business model. Myself being a founder, the issues I choose to share with Startup Grind on my platform are very personal to me. But I definitely think that there is a shift when people are building their companies towards making those policies.
Yeah,
I'm hoping for that anyway. So, next question is, how prevalent do you think, and you've spoken about this a little bit, unconscious biases in the sectors you work in?
So I think when you look at the statistics, one has to assume that there is still bias. And if I look at our workplace cultures, I think probably, well, put it this way. I mean, some of the research that KPMG have been doing around what the experience of women is in the workplace and why our workplaces remain so undiverse at senior level, and looking for what the causes of that might be. We did a study with Murray Edwards College, which is one of the women-owned colleges in Oxford. So, some of the most talented, successful women in the UK, and they surveyed their entire alumni, and they said to them, what do you believe has been the biggest barrier to career success for you? And they, frankly, expected at the outset that the answer was going to be balancing work and family. And that wasn't the leading response. The leading response at nearly 40% was workplace culture. And the reason for that is, and I think this goes right back to sort of the start of life, we encourage and reward quite different behaviours in girls and boys. We encourage girls to be nice, to share, to care, to behave in those sort of ways, lovely ways. That's the person I want to be. But we encourage little boys to be brave and courageous and fight for what you want. And so we're rewarded for those behaviours. Now, most workplace cultures have developed to recognise and reward those socialised male behaviours. People who are courageous and brave and fight and take credit and say I, and not to recognise and reward those that say we and share and care and empathise. And so it's really not the fault of the people making the decisions, and nobody intended to disadvantage anyone, but we have naturally evolved as cultures to reward behaviours which stereotypically happen less in female groups than happen in male groups. And so recognising that and recognising the differences, the stereotypically natural differences in behaviour between men and women, help us to sort of stand back and start to address how that might be biasing us in the decisions we make. And Bridget talked about, how do we get women to have the confidence and courage to grab those opportunities. And I think it's partly about recognising that women do tend to behave very differently in promotion and recruitment situations. So, and I think she's left, but one of my colleagues will remember me talking about this because she was a perfect example of it when she came for her interview. We had two equally well qualified candidates for this very senior role in KPMG and the Isle of Man. One male, one female, and I had done the first interview with one of my male partners, and two male partners were due to do the second interview. And I remember very clearly the note that I sent them, because I said, when you meet the two of them, you will think he is better than her, because he is selling himself. He's selling himself really effectively. He's doing what we all think you should do in an interview, and men are really good at doing this. They go in, they sell themselves, they bluff where they need to. Women don't do that. They are forensically self-analytical about how they present themselves. They will not apply, generally speaking, will not apply for an advert unless they can tick every box and say, I know I have proven experience in all of these things. And they will come into the interview and they will tell you about all the things that they can't do or don't feel terribly good at. And if you recognise that they are being brutally honest and forensically self-aware, then you can absolutely trust everything that they say in that interview situation, and you can make a really calm, reasoned decision. But you've got to recognise that the guy that they're up against is presenting a very different picture of his abilities. And if you don't look at it through that lens, you're not going to make the right decision. Ironically, in that situation, despite me pointing this out, the man was selected. 6 months later, he left the firm, and we went back to the woman who now works for us and said, would you like to have another go at this? So, I think it's really interesting to acknowledge that difference in behaviour. And the more we talk about that and see that, then the better we will get at having fair conversations or making fair decisions when we're taking voting.
I think that resonated with a few of us in the room. So jumping onto the boardroom, what's happening there? How do we address gender bias within the boardroom?
Well, that was one of the reasons why I had my notes on my knee to remind me of a couple of these wonderful quotes. Because KPMG in the UK have been very involved in the 30% Club and also the Hampton Alexander Review. And a couple of years ago, some of you may recall that Hampton Alexander started to get quite front-footed, shall we say, about speaking to the FTSE 350 companies who hadn't made changes since the review began, and to say to them, you still don't have any women, or you have one woman on your board. Why aren't you making more changes? And they very bravely published the list of excuses that they got back. And it made quite some reason. And when I've talked about this in the past, I usually have the excuses up on the board behind me. And I can hear intakes of breath around the room that genuinely a large corporate was happy to come back and say it. I mean, a couple of them were, there aren't that many women with the right credentials and depths of experience to sit on the board. The issues covered are extremely complex. Most women don't want the hassle or pressure of sitting on a board. There were more around my other board colleagues wouldn't want a woman on the board. And we already have one woman. It's somebody else's turn. So there clearly is still some very clear bias, and slightly embarrassingly, I'm the only woman on my board and on my executive committee. And when it came to International Women's Day this year, I said to the board and Exco, I think it'd be a really nice touch. I want to send out. Here's what I want to send out. And we would just have a picture of myself and Kevin, who's the chair, at the bottom of it. But I think it'd be really nice if we have a picture of everyone on Exco. And it would be great if you could wear pink or purple. So they go, oh yeah, that's absolutely fine. We donned pink shirts and sent photos to me because obviously we couldn't read. And we put this lovely collage of pictures together, and I sent them the draft just so they could see what it was going to look like. And a couple of them rang me and said, "You can't send this out." And I said, "Why can't we send it out?" And he said, "It's just all white men and one woman." And I said, "Do you think people didn't know that?" I said, "But we're not. There's no point in hiding the reality of that. The point is, if in the email we're saying we recognise that we are not a diverse group, and we're trying to change that, and here's how we're trying to change it. But hiding from the visual impact of the reality is anything."
Well, we are coming to the final questions because, as you know, we have a panel of very special guests who have joined us this morning, and we're going to hand over to Mark in a minute. But there is a couple of questions, maybe we could cover them all together. Like, do you think that core roles are offered to women? How could they do better? And what are the benefits and opportunities of reverse mentoring? That's a big one.
Yeah, that is a big one. And actually, given we're going to include everyone else in the moment, because I haven't had direct experience of reverse mentoring, and you may have done. I talked about the fact that, and you and I discussed this when we were preparing, that I think often where we can have the most impact, it's based on our own experience. So that's one of the reasons why I've been so focused on gender, because I know what it's like to be a woman in the workplace. I now also know what it's like to be a woman at board level in the workplace. So I'd kind of just like to go back to that point for a very specific reason, which is that the time of life when most women hit board level roles is in their late 40s, early 50s. And one thing that will very possibly be going on around that time is that you will be perimenopausal. And we don't talk about it. We completely ignore it. And frankly, if there was something, a low thyroid thing that was hitting the entire male workforce, just at the time that they were hitting board level, we'd be talking about it as a workplace issue. So one of the things that we have been very active on in KPMG over the past year or so is talking about menopause as a workplace issue and recognising the impact it is having on our ability to retain women at senior levels. Because, and this was the other reason why I had my notes on my knee, because I wanted to remind myself of some of the impacts. You will be horrified to hear that 1 in 5, 20% of menopausal women leave their job due to their symptoms. And we don't talk about those symptoms, and we don't talk about the help that is available to address those symptoms. And around the time that I took on the KPMG Islands job, I remember thinking, I just seem to be losing the ability to think straight and to sleep and to not worry. And all of those things I came to understand because I was fortunate enough to have great girlfriends who were going through the menopause and who had great GPs that were helping, who said, this isn't that you're losing your touch. You've just got very low levels of estrogen. And it's affecting you. It's a chemical thing. Go do something about it. And the first issue I faced, having understood what was happening, was that 66% of menopausal women who consult a GP get offered antidepressants, not HRT. And we have this whole fallacy or misunderstanding about the dangers of HRT and the efficacy of HRT. Take it from me. It works. And so if we're not, and that's one of the things, we've had GPs in, fantastic menopause GP, menopause specialists, in to talk to our male and female leaders about the impact of menopause and just create awareness about the help that is available so that women don't struggle silently at the most important time in their careers through having all these additional burdens and barriers. So Denise knew I really wanted to talk about that, but I think that's a really important one for us to recognise how the menopause might be impacting our own performance and the performance of the people around us, and making sure that they're getting the right advice and help and support so that they can perform.
I love it. Personally, I'm going through it at the moment, and I think the best way to normalise something like this is to just talk about it. So thank you. Thank you so much, Micky, for sharing your experience with us and for making time. I know after yesterday you must be a little bit exhausted. I wanted to actually at this point also give a special mention to my co-director, Mark, who is a man, and he is so supportive of my work. I'm going to hand over to him now, but he is an absolute star. Always happy to help me, support me. Thank you. So, could we shift a little bit so we can get everybody into the screen? We're going to hand over to Mark, and he's going to introduce our special guests who are going to talk about their experiences from different perspectives of the diversity issue. So, over to you.
Thank you, Denise. Thank you, Micky. Embarrassing me on stage. Good morning, everyone. Proud to introduce 4 incredible panelists this morning. Billy Ragoso, founder of Matrix Studios and Synergize. Nicole Torres-Byrne, Gibraltar Department of Education. Monica Thies, Business Development Manager in Gibraltar and Communications Manager, Gibraltar Betting and Gaming Association. And last but not least, Sophie Wood, Learning and Development Partner at Lottoland. Sophie, maybe you'd like to start us off, just to introduce a bit about your story and maybe some of your recent experiences coming over to Lottoland.
Fantastic. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Turn it on. Okay. So I've been at Lottoland for 3 months now. So very much early days, and the main focus is my job at Lottoland is to kind of drive diversity and inclusion forward for the company, alongside my wonderful colleague Christina. Previous to Lottoland, I worked for Entain, and for a year I was their global inclusion manager. So that was a really great kind of experience of managing the inclusion function within a kind of huge global corporate. I came over to Gibraltar in 2015, started my career in gambling with Gala Bingo in customer services, which was for me an absolutely huge culture change from my previous life in the United Kingdom, where I worked for the UK Police Service. And I used to work as a trainer in the police service, and I used to train police officers how to investigate crime. It was a lot more complex than that, but we haven't got that much time. And I did that for about 12 years. Now, halfway through my policing career, I got seconded to the Home Office for a year to roll out a national training project. And it was during that experience I came out as trans. And so coming out as a trans woman, 2011, in the UK Police Service, which is a very alpha male kind of organisation, if you're going to characterise it, brought about significant challenges. I didn't realise at the time, when I came out of trans, that it would be the first coming out of trans. I thought, oh, it's happened now. Here I am. Hello, world. But every single new work experience that I've had subsequently has involved a coming out process. So I'm quite an expert at that now, but not through choice. Whilst I was working for the police service, I was vice chair of an organisation called the National Trans Police Association, And at that time, in 2011, 2012, we had probably about 100 members across UK policing. And we were a very covert organisation within the police service. So it was unusual, like managing communications to our membership. Everything's done through BCC because people aren't even out to each other in the group. It's a very fascinating experience. But my role for that organisation was I was the voice of the NTPA for many years. And I engaged in training activities with people like the Police Federation, the unions that support police staff such as Unison, Police Superintendents Association. And I educated the police service about what it was being to be trans and the trans community. But I also educated the trans community about the police service as well, in terms of managing their expectations. So my experience with diversity and inclusion, first and foremost, is a lived experience. As a trans person, I'm probably kind of the most marginalised minority that kind of exists in the workplace, throughout the world. And that brings you really great insights on life and life in the workplace. So you're looking at somebody who, for 30 odd years of their life, had male white privilege and didn't know it. And then overnight, it disappeared. And then I knew about it. And I knew how real it was. So when you talk about things like privilege, people think, does that exist? Is that a thing? God, it's a thing. It really is. So that's just a small insight into how I bring my lived experience into driving diversity and inclusion, which I'm really happy to do at Lottoland at the moment. And what I would say, final message, is diversity and inclusion in the workplace is about attitudes and behaviour and changing attitudes and behaviour. People tend to talk a lot in the diversity and inclusion world about statistics and representation because stats are easy to measure and people always go for the easy options. The hard work in the field of diversity and inclusion is changing attitudes and behaviour. That's where the hard yards are. And that's where you need to focus your attention as a business. One of the biggest challenges in a global corporation is that entails people unlearning behaviours that they're hardwired to have. I grew up in the 1980s in the UK. I was socially engineered to be racist, homophobic, and misogynistic. I didn't know that. It's my lived experience that's brought that realisation to me. So there's lots of things that you have to unlearn to become a better person, to provide genuine equity of opportunity through your genuine, authentic lived behaviour in the workplace. And that's the challenge. Unconscious bias is a really kind mechanism to forgive people for their failings in this regard. That's my experience of consciousness. The majority of bias or intention in the workplace is very conscious. Because barrier to inclusion is ignorance. And quite often, that ignorance is willful. And those are the different conversations you need to have in the workplace to start to actually realise a visceral, inclusive culture.
Thank you, Sophie.
Well, I guess it's my turn.
Yes, I did put you on the spot. I tend to do that, but you have an incredible journey to share, so please.
Well, my journey, obviously, to where I am now started because 25 years ago, my second son was born with a disability, and my career pathway changed. First, I left my job to care for him, and then once, as it happens, you then get roped in because you've got some free time into some form of charity. And obviously, I joined the Disability Society as a very young mum in a culture where disability still wasn't included anywhere. And then I just joined head on and was given the pathway of education, training, and employment. And I come from being a PA to a manager. I don't really understand, but being who I am, I just thought, and I've got to do this. I've got to be a voice for these young people and then older people who existed with disabilities who I wasn't that much aware of, and that happens. You're not aware of who really exists around you. And then we identified things that were lacking for them here in GIB, and for me was having a good workplace, and that meant, really thinking about why isn't there a good workplace culture for these people who are our community and who they exist and can be productive members of society. So being who I am, I embarked into training. So I took a degree in the Open University of Social Care, then with being a mum, I don't know why I did this. Then I became a social employment practitioner, and thus joining the British Association of Support Employment, who then introduced me to the European Union Support Employment, who I can proudly say I'm a board member. The board has represented me, which is incredible. We are a diverse board, lots of women, pleased to say, champions for people with disabilities who do find hardship into finding work placements, not only in Gibraltar, all across Europe. They are considered one of the poorest minority groups because of the unconscious bias that we can't really produce at the workplace, changing. And then I further, because I did manage to then go back into work, and I was working as a learning support assistant with special needs within government, but promoting that, we should be focusing more on a vocational pathway for young people with disabilities, especially those with more moderate learning difficulties that academically can't possibly reach GCSE potential. We focus a lot on the academic side, but we don't focus on the opportunity of skilling them, and then giving them that opportunity to form their dream, aspiring to work. So persistent me, carried on, and eventually I got them to move me into the position that I am now. As a trial, 6 years down the line, as a trial to see if it works within the education department. So it's just like a literal move from school to department. And because of all my connections within the European Union and my training as a social employment practitioner, have very good people that I could reflect on and pester completely, because I needed help. This is just me trying to set up something. I'm not inventing the wheel or reinventing it. I'm trying to tweak it for GIB, because we are very unique. We need to make it very bespoke for us, make it work. We don't have big organizations that can take on a lot of people. We've got a lot of small to medium-sized businesses. We've got to look at, the logistics, how many people are employed in the different organizations. Then money comes into play, and employers need to make money. Then we've been hit by COVID. Then employers have been hit really hard. So it's, trying to find the best for our little Gibraltar and the best for this group of young people. So I started there. Then I further decided I really need to consolidate this. I really need to look at careers, in depth. Embarked on a postgraduate and career development. Whoever told me to do that was crazy, my own self. So many theories that somebody obviously was so bored and invented them, which great theories, because you look at, Gibraltar, you can actually really do person environment fit. You can. It's so small, so many people. You get to know people, the environment that they work in, and the culture. And then you can think of, well, happenstance, why not? Because I'm here. And I'm looking like, who's here? I've got to network. That's happenstance. And then you can find jobs, and then chaos, because who doesn't live in a world of chaos? It would be boring if we didn't have it. But it's all those elements together, and then finding the right people that you can then connect with to really have a really, empower these young people to become part of the workplace and become a truly diverse workplace. I work with young people that have moderate learning difficulties, some with physical disabilities, autism spectrum, Asperger's, to young people that have mental health issues. People that have fantastic skills, really poor social skills. People who have got gifts, and we need to really tap into those gifts and then showcase those gifts. And obviously, as employers, you will know yourselves, you need to have a workforce that produces. But sometimes that unconscious bias, and it does exist, is there. I mean, I can tell you that this summer, I was introduced to this magnificent young lady. She's got cerebral palsy. She came from university last year. She got a 2-1 on her French degree. She lived 6 years in Bordeaux on her own. She overcame so many barriers. She's a twin, and the twin is perfectly fully functional. So, that comparison. And she came back to GIB, having achieved all that, and she applied on her own accord. She didn't want any help. She thought, hey, I can do this. But 6 employers in the unconscious bias sector, nobody gave her an opportunity. She had a fantastic CV, and she was broken. When she was referred to me, she was broken. Her self-esteem was on the floor. She just didn't even want to apply anymore. She was scared. And we just like, I can't believe this. Who would not want this young person with so much, energy and intelligence and strive and dream, and who wouldn't want this person? And that really hit home, because I've been working mostly with young people with learning difficulties, learning disabilities, no academic qualifications, trying to upskill them through the education department at the college, through our personal and social development courses. I deliver prep for work, so it's basically finding their skills and qualities, and all of a sudden, it's the first time I had this person with academic qualifications, with her own set of unique skills and previous work experience, placement, living. And I thought, I've got to work harder. I've got to promote this. And if anything, that showed me that there is still an unconscious bias in GIB. Unfortunately, they see the disability before the person. Like Micky said, the man sold himself, and I've got nothing against men. I've got fantastic co-work at all. I mean, I've got a husband and 3 boys. So imagine my house. And everybody's different. Everybody's got their own abilities. I mean, I've got my son studying to be a doctor. My eldest, my middle son, is easy, and my youngest just wants to be a professional footballer, athletics champion, or an actor. Oh gosh. So imagine, and then, but it is so. Men are seen as the forefront still, women are still, and then if you've got a disability and you're a woman, then forget it. So anyway, I teamed up with Vali, who'll speak a bit now, because I want to make life easier for my students and those that obviously transition into workplace, especially those with learning difficulties. Many of them find it very hard to retain, even type, basic skills, reading, writing, and through an app that Vali developed for me, because I don't do that. I can dictate and say what I would like, for them to be able to log easier travel training, basic skills that we take completely for granted, which they can eventually do, because they can. I've seen that happen. And just facilitate for them, find new ways, especially this magnificent digital world that, I love the digital world, but it's taken some people of my age a bit of, getting used to. But these guys just have it at, I think kids are born knowing how to use a laptop or an iPad as soon as they're born. But yeah, that's my journey. And I'm sorry, but I will pester you.
Thank you, Nicole. So you are thinking right. You are thinking right, even if it's one by one. But over to you, Vali, only startup founder, female, who is participating in the panel today. So tell us about your story.
Thank you again for thinking of me for this event. Happy to be here today. Just to follow up on, I'm Vali Fragoso. I have a startup company both in gaming and I also do software development. It's registered here in Gibraltar, and I was introduced to Nicole just not so long ago by Denise to look into developing an app for youngsters who have disabilities, dyslexia, autism. You can talk about a large number of issues they have been having, and we just teamed up and it kind of clicked. We built an app. It's all Synergize. Sorry, I have to correct a small thing. She is the founder. I'm just a developer in this case. So we developed the app. It's ready to be launched in October. We're just waiting for students to give it a try before we go live. So we get them to use the app first, see if there's any difficulties. The app actually talks about how the person's feeling. So you can click on something that says, "I'm happy today." Okay, great. So what do you want to do now? I'm feeling terrible. Do you want to call somebody? It's an emergency. So you give them an immediate option to call them. There's a lot of support text as well in the app, which actually allows them to hear it instead of just reading it, because you do have kids with dyslexia and everything else. So they just can click on the audio button and they can hear the text. So it's basically a guidance when there's nobody with you out there by yourself in the world. So it gives you a sort of independence to travel. I'm really happy to have developed the app with the help of Nicole and Denise, and with their guidance as to what needs to be included in the app, etc. Pretty soon, I'm sure Denise will post something about the app as well on social media, so we can see what's going on and how it's being picked up. One of the things we would like to develop with the app very soon is to see if we can add a lot of extra support for younger kids as well. Right now, it's supporting more teenagers and kids who are looking for jobs. And it also contains a little bit of entertainment, a few memory games, so you kind of help them with their memories, or retaining memory, etc. as well. You also have things like listen to radio while you're traveling. So we didn't keep it boring. We tried to keep it as entertaining as possible, so they can stay in the app as well. So thanks, Nicole, for giving us the opportunity to develop it. Apart from that, I have a gaming company. I've been in the gaming industry, probably links a bit to Micky, for 20 plus years now. And I have been in every single role you can possibly think of. I started in India. I started as a CS associate. I used to do emails and calls. I used to take about 72 calls a day. That was my journey start in the gaming industry. I did have a few other jobs before that. But some of the things Micky said, they kind of resound, especially me coming from India, a place where women are still kind of secondary citizens, and you will see 80% of the women are still at home. They are homemakers, very few women work. The new generation is changing, but at the same time, it's not changing as much as we would like, because there's a taboo in India that women by 25 they should get married, they should have kids. If you don't have kids, there's a social stigma. You can't go out. Maybe not as much as the other countries where you can't go out with the male support, but still you can't go out to play certain places. Some of the things I found, I came here in 2007. I've been here since then, and a lot has changed for me in that sense as well. Because you look at people and it's such a different culture. You can go to supermarket here, you can buy beer. It's a different story if you get asked your ID card, because take it as a compliment. But if you go to India, you can't buy liquor as a woman, for example. Just a simple beer. I mean, we take it for granted here that we have beer, but there you can't go to a liquor store. You need to bar, you're stamped as a child, whatever it might be. So there's a lot of things that happen there which a lot of us don't get to see here. And I think what affects is the way they are taught. They're taught at home, they're taught at school. It kind of is a brainwash, because that is what we've done. That is what you're finding in your everyday life as well. So that has to change. Even here in Gibraltar, I was really surprised when I first came here. No offense to anybody, that there was a girls' school and a boys' school. It's a massive disconnect between the genders. That shouldn't be there in 2021. It should be a connected school. There is still some sort of separation in this side and this side while they still have a bigger school. But I think that's a bigger gap. And the second thing that Micky said that really resounds with me is women don't sell their skills. They don't. Unfortunately, that's how we are raised. To be nice, to be good to people. Don't say anything you shouldn't be saying. Don't sell yourself too much because you look like you're trying desperately. Things like that are taught to us. Maybe not necessarily as a but very specifically by our parents, by the society, the way we are. So those things have to change. Unless those change, I don't think the work culture can change, because that is the biggest problem. And I think the day that changes, we will see a lot of them in the book. For me specifically, I own the company. I own a company now here in Egypt, and it took me 20 years to get that confidence. If I had some sort of guidance, for example, non-exec director training, coaching that's going on in the UK, a lot of the things don't exist here in Egypt. So people either have to go to UK to London, or we take our own time, our own holiday, and have to go learn something else. So those are the things I think companies can bring in, non-exec coaching for women. Equally, you don't have to separate women and men. Whoever fares in higher positions. And another biggest challenge is obviously marriage, kids, maintaining work-life balance. It's something we don't really want to talk about, but it is there, because we're getting off at 6 o'clock from work, and we're going to our second job at home, and it's a massive job. By the time we get to bed, probably midnight. So it's not easy for us to actually get back up, bring in that energy that men usually bring in the morning. So I think all those things have to change. Many countries don't give equal paternity leave and paternity leave either. Scandinavian countries do, but none of these countries here do it. I mean, talk about development, we talk, as example, probably America, we shouldn't be talking about it, but it is. They don't even do paid leaves or paid maternity leave. So we are in a better shape, yes, but I think there's a lot of scope to improve in that area as well. So all put together, I kind of agree with a lot of the stuff Micky said. So I think everything should start from home, should start from school, and that will bring about the change of how people think, and that will make work culture. I don't think it's straight from work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vali.
Over to you, Monica.
Hello, and thank you for inviting me. I'm not a public speaker, so I'm sounding a bit nervous.
This is why you're here.
So I also agree with what basically you have been sharing today. I was born in Germany, then grew up in Poland, then went to Italy, to the university, England, back to Germany. And that's true. It starts in the family, it's linked to national culture, how people think, the mentality. And during this journey, I had to myself unlearn a lot of behaviors, which I have learned actually in the country of my parents, Poland, which is less tolerant, for example, towards transgender. And I hope that will change with time. Sometimes I just have strong discussion with my family members about it as well. And I'm grateful actually that I've learned tolerance by getting to know different cultures. It was very helpful. It has helped me to become a better person. So then I came to G, and I have been impressed by the cosmopolitan cultures, by the way people live together, Jews close to Muslims. It was for me, for someone who lived in Poland, unthinkable. And it had made me actually fall in love with Europe. So I've been here living already for nearly 12 years. And for the last 9 years, I've been working as business development manager at INS, which is a global law firm and business solution provider. And again, I work with people from different parts of the world, from Asia, also, from places which I did not visit myself, and it had opened my horizons. And in the meantime, I have been also assisting the Gibraltar Betting and Gaming Association with different organizational matters, communication. And I've noticed an increasing number of women and also different races included in the decision-making process at the GBGA. And that's very encouraging. And another point worth mentioning is actually the transgender staff, which I see in the gaming sector. And a lot of initiatives, for example, which you have noticed during the June month, the Pride month. Playtech, for example, have decorated the entrance to the office with the balloons and colors of the Pride month. And I find it really amazing. Not mentioning the social media activities, which have been also promoted by the BGC, which is Betting and Gaming Council. So it's not just the operators themselves, but the industry. It's a single voice towards change, which I find a great thing. And I hope that my children, who are actually very little, one is boy, another is girl, will basically have easier path because of the effort we are putting into it. And it's not just about the promotion of women. We all know that there's strong disparity at the top, but about the promotion of backgrounds, cultures, religions, ethnic groups, and also sexual orientations. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So it's been a really, really long session. We've covered a lot of stuff. Our guests are still going to be here for a little longer, so if you want to ask them any questions, I think we're going to move to just ask them directly, I think, Mark. For online questions, we will send them over directly to you if you don't mind. If people just want to send us an email to the Startup Grind Gibraltar webpage, we will put you in touch with our guests because we have had such important issues discussed today and such a broad spectrum of things. Thank you so much all for attending today. This wouldn't be possible without the help and support of our sponsors, Gibraltar Finance, Abacus Gibraltar, and Gib Telecom. You'll see there's some brochures about pensions, which is not very exciting, I'm very sorry. But there's a new law on pensions for private companies, and I have to say that my sponsors are fantastic suppliers of pensions, so please take them with you. And with that, I am going to wrap this session up. So again, thank you so much for being here today.
Tea.